When's the last time you attended a Mavs game after the Luka trade, bro?
Zero.
See, you're part of the problem. You're to blame for this decline in there.
Well, I haven't since I got shit canned. I haven't been to a Mavs game since.
Welcome to Rogue Bogues Basketball Series. Myself, Mike Procopio from Dallas, featuring Trent every now and then. Bro, what's going on?
Bogues, first of all, from the Rogue Bogues family, I want to give you a round of applause for showing up for two straight podcasts.
Yeah.
I mean, I know Coach Bogues, it's been tough. Your schedule's been demanding, but again, as the Rogue Bogues community, 2 in a row. You're a regular fucking Cal Ripken now with your streak of 2 in a row. Joe DiMaggio, you know, guys like that. Iron Man.
Yeah, Joe DiMaggio reference to Australian listeners will do real well, pro. Well done on that one. And I'm just glad you found the join button on the Zoom this week.
Without question. But I'm here.
Well done.
But I'm here.
Oh, that's some expensive water, pro. Is that?
It's SodaStream, actually. It's not that expensive at all. But yeah.
Fair enough. Just living in luxury over there in Dallas, mate. Let's get into it this week. Obviously, we're not going to do Team of the Weeks because there was a lot of shenanigans going on in the last couple of games with rotations and not. So I thought we'd do our Team of the Year. And it doesn't have to be, obviously, it's not going to be the number 1 seed or anything like that, but just a team that, for you, heavily exceeded expectations from where they should have been, where they were picked, where you thought they'd be. I'll go first to make it easier for you. I'm going to go to the Detroit Pistons. We spoke about last week, one of the biggest turnarounds in NBA history from win-loss record last season to this season. And they play a bruising physical style. They've got some veterans that have kind of been, your Tobias Harris and your Hardaway and guys that have kind of been spat out of other teams and not kind of valued, and they've come together and they play a nice style of basketball. With the eye injury and whatnot, and I think they've for me really exceeded to where they should be. And it wasn't like they scraped into the 6. They had 3 solid games above Orlando in the 6, and we're battling some of these better teams throughout the season and causing some problems throughout the season. So I'm going to give the Detroit Pistons a nod. I think they should be commended. They've got something to build on. We do see these sometimes. Let's just hope it's not a flash in the pan. Look, they have some young guys. They should be able to build now for the future. But it's good to see that interesting city, pro, back in the playoffs again, which is nice.
I mean, Bogues, I always try to go not only with just sort of intuition in my gut, but you just go with Vegas and what you think their team's going to do. They had them at 25 wins. I had them at like 14th in the conference. They exceeded expectations by 19 games. JB Bickerstaff, got fired in Cleveland, and now they're obviously number 1 in the East, but he falls into this position, this job, and I think it's his type of roster, like a lot of just bruising tough guys. You got one superstar in Cade Cunningham, then you got all these sort of square pegs and round hole types of players, guys who fight, guys who literally and figuratively fight, but they're tough, they overachieve, they scrape. Cade Cunningham comes in from an injury, injury-riddled season, the season before, comes back now and, 26, 9-6, and, proven himself to be a big-time superstar for years to come. And it's just great how those guys fight and they just claw and they did well. Like I had half of it was talent for me. Half of it was like, are they going to tank for one more high pick, try to get Cooper Flag, try to get somebody in the top 3, top 4. But those guys were good all season. Like you said, they didn't just fall into 6. They clawed in there. They were really good by, stretches of the season. They had a lot of injuries with, Jaden Ivey going out. I mean, that was a big time loss. The emergence of Malik Beasley just doing really well. One of the best 3-point shooters in the league. And he's really he's been a guy that's been up and down in the last 3 or 4 years of his career to really do well. And, they just have a really good way about them. And, JV Bickerstaff, has always been, going back to his dad, Bernie Bickerstaff, who coached in the league forever. He's always been just a hard-nosed guy, coached hard-nosed, tells guys the truth. He's one of the, he's like a Jamal Mosley to me. He's one of those guys he's just genuine, really good. He's been around forever, and, he's proven his worth for sure. they're a fun team to watch. I know you gave me a lot of shit early in the year. You couldn't believe I had them so low. And I'm like, dude, I just don't see the upside with wanting to win this year. And they proved me and a million other people wrong. They played well, and they deserve the spot that they got for sure.
Yeah, and Cunningham's just getting better and better. Really kind of smooth game about him. Very hard to speed up. Got size, so they've been good. Who do you have?
Bogues, I had the Houston Rockets. For me, I had them at like 6 or 7 in the beginning of the year. And for a team that's just sort of like, I give them shit all the time for being AAU in the years past, and the type of players they have. Not a lot of basketball IQ on the team. A lot of guys who just sort of play hard and just sort of play a lot of one-on-one, or just, talented guys who could score, but didn't know if they could bring it together. And I remember that draft they had a couple years ago, and they had 3 first-round picks. I think that was the Jabari Smith, Thompson, and Şengün draft, if I'm not mistaken. And Şengün, I remember talking to one of their officials on their team. I thought he was their best rookie that they drafted, just because he actually fit a position. And those guys exceeded my expectations without question. I mean, the emergence of Amen Thompson, obviously Jalen Green and Şengün doing what they did. Van Vliet was hurt a lot of the, especially at the end of the year, but Jalen Green has really gotten better. Dylan Brooks does his thing, tough guy, defender and all that. Obviously our guy Landale, who's been up and down with, as far as when they put him in the rotation. By the way, 40% for Landale for 3, by the way. You're welcome, Houston, by the way. So
for the season?
He made, 40% for the season. Not a lot of attempts, but the one he had, I told him today, we're going back and forth. The one he looked today, he's probably the best in-game 3 I thought he's ever shot. So he's doing all right. But back to them. They they're a group that I would never in my wildest dreams thought they would finish second in the West. And it's a lot to be said. Ime Udoka has done a great job coaching them, sort of put them in line of what they need to be doing. And they didn't get a lot out of Reed Shepherd this year. Their top pick from last year's draft, but guys like Cam Whitmore and Thompson has played really well. Their second unit's just sort of this tough group that you just sort of thrown together. And like I said, with Jock's sort of deal with Steven Adams, it's sort of like an every other game deal. Where they play Steve and they play Jock and they play Steve and they play Jock. Now they're going 2 big lineup with Steve and Şengün in the same. In the same lineup. So they're trying to do what the league's trending towards, is going to 2 big. So they've been an interesting group, but definitely exceeded my expectations.
Yeah, they've been solid. A real good mix of kind of like similar to Detroit in a way of toughness and talent. Mm-hmm. Brooks, they've got guys that'll fight, got physical bigs, and they got some talented, long athletic guys. So they've got a really good mix. I think experience still might be an issue for them in the playoffs, but it's going to be interesting to see how they go. And I think you're definitely going to have to earn your playoff series win against them if you beat them. They're not going to beat themselves. They're going to make you fight for it. They're going to be scrappy. There'll possibly be a suspension in the series. They're that kind of team, right? They're going to fight you. So I think that's a good one as well. I think those two in their respective conferences have done a phenomenal job of bouncing back from where they were, and it's just good to see some different teams up in the 6. The weak team of the year based on where they should have been. I mean, is it anyone else but Phoenix, bro? I don't know if you've got anyone different, but I mean, you could put Philly in there, but I think Philly with the injury run and whatnot, it's a little tougher. But Phoenix were generally pretty healthy in the bulk of the season, where they went from 1. They were 1 at one point. They were first in the West at one point during the season, and then just absolutely capitulated, like next level. Like the big 3 wasn't working. Then Nurkic was to blame. He was out of there. Things got worse. KD obviously hurt towards the end of the season, out of the lineup. The Beal, Booker, Durant thing just doesn't work. They got to make some big changes in the offseason, but they kind of sold the farm to get that big 3 together back when, and it's going to be interesting to see that. I just don't see a whole lot of light at the end of the tunnel. Now, there's rumors that KD's already been linked to New York. Do they extend Bridges? That's what I'm reading. There's different places KD could end up, but the Suns are going to, at this point, pro, you almost just have to blow it up. Do you even just maybe keep Booker and then blow the rest up and see what you can get for those. Maybe rebuild a little bit. Does Booker then want to be part of a rebuild again? He started his career as a rebuild guy. They're in some trouble, bro. That this roster build's not great, and they were the severe underachiever. When you look at who, Dallas making it above them without, with that bad trade that everyone hated, and then AD missing a bulk of time, and they still make the 10. It's just absolutely ridiculous. I mean, the Suns finished 1-9 on the season. If they just go 5-5, they're in. So yeah, Phoenix gets my nod for most disappointing team of the season.
Yeah, Bogues, obviously they're probably the most disappointing team in the last few years as far as what you have on a roster in sort of the production that you have. It made very little sense to me. Even okay, so you're not a top 2, top 3 team, but you have these players, right? You're not going to be, you're not going to be a 70-win team, obviously. But you have these 3 guys, and you have a decent bench, and you have a coach that's been there before. And it's hard to say, like, did they check out with Bud or not, because you're not there. And it's not fair to read internet reports, read, media that's probably bought off by one stretch of the imagination, another for the media, like, as far as them leaking and getting protected. You don't know what really happened there. But even with that roster, like, you would think that team could at least finish 5 or 6 in the West. And they just never gelled. Last year was tough because they made that trade. They made the trade pretty late, and they didn't really have a whole training camp or whatever to get to gel and get together. But now they've been together for a whole offseason, for a whole training camp, for a whole year, and it just didn't work. Then you hear reports about, infighting, Bud, and all of this, and trading all of their capital to do what they did. Look, I thought they were going to be a top 2, top 3 team in the West when they made the trade. I thought this year they'd be in the top 2 or top 3 in the West, and they just flatline, man. It's just hard to, and it's not like lack of effort. Like Durant 26-6 and Booker 26-7. You had guys that put good effort in. It just sometimes things don't gel out. And look, Durant's the only, besides Booker, like Booker could bring you back the most, but then you got to keep one piece. And with the amount of money that you could offer, because it's your own free agent and there is history with him and the team, you would think Durant's probably going to be the guy that you try to replenish either draft picks or get a couple other guys to come along. He's been linked to Boston's got an issue they have to deal with salaries and things. Now, do you do like a 2-for-1 with Boston, where you go you go Holiday and Porzingis for Durant, or you go to Houston and get somebody there, a couple of their pieces, and then you sort of have Booker, and you just have all these like good, really high-end role players with Booker that more share the ball and sort of have him be the dominant guy on the ball, and then everyone else just sort of, does the little things. I'm not sure. It's just something that you can't read, but they've been very, very disappointing as a team. I just can't put my finger on it. Those guys have been healthy for most of the year. Obviously they've been out with some injuries here and there. They got Tyus Jones in the offseason, Plumlee, Royce O'Neal, Grayson Allen. You would have thought that they would have done and fought a little bit more to get that middle of the pack at least. But for them to be in 11 is weird to me.
Yeah,
very strange.
Super bad. Who you got?
So Bogues, obviously Phoenix is the easy pick. And then I don't want to pick a team that had injuries, right? Like I don't want the Phillies of the world. It's just too easy. Dallas too easy with the trade and then the injuries that they've had. So I'm probably just gonna go with the Miami Heat. Finishing 10th. Look, they had the issue with Booker, but I mean not Booker, Butler, but you thought that they had a little bit more in the tank to finish higher than 10th in the East. I don't know. To me, I just thought there was a little bit more there, with the guys that they have on roster. They still, you still got Hero, you still got Adebayo, You know, you still got guys like that, and then you've got all these other guys that play in the rotation. You know, you got Jimmy the Greek, Terry Rozier. You know, I mean, it's. But you would have thought
most people won't get that.
Would have thought
that reference, but it's a gambling reference.
Terry 14 parlay Rozier. And, you know, you would have thought that they would have had a little bit more in them. Look, they've had fight with them for years. We all, you know, we're sick of hearing it, culture this, culture that, but they do have it. And they do have talent. And they do have coach. You know, and in the trade they made, you know, you still got Wiggins back in that trade. You would have thought you had enough to sort of do something.
They played better, Pro. They played better when Butler was still with them but out than they did once they got pieces back for Butler being out and then playing. Like, so they got Wiggins and a few other pieces, and it went worse. It was like they almost played. Miami's been one of the best teams at playing shorthanded of the last 5 to 10 years. Like when they play shorthanded, they just somehow steal wins. We saw it in that playoff series a couple of years ago. But as soon as they got more reinforcements after Butler left, because people were like, "Oh shit! Imagine they can just replace Butler, who's giving them nothing, replace him with 2 or 3 decent players." Miami can be okay again. It went worse for him. That's what was crazy about it to me. Like, I thought for sure they'll be a 6 or a 7. But man, I think it's a good one as well.
Yeah, it's hard for me. You know, for me, it's hard. I think it's easier to have guys that you played with all year and get shorthanded, and everybody knows everybody. Everybody knows everybody's strengths and weaknesses. I think it's easier to win shorthanded that way than to get players back in a trade, unless you're going to get Kevin Garnett back in 08 or something like that, like somebody like in the big time prime tough, and they could come in on a whim and just dominate games. When you get guys like, you know, no offense to Wiggins, but like you get a guy like that, you know, takes some time to sort of acclimate himself into things. It's probably harder to have somebody from the outside come in and then win when you have them in trades versus not having your best player in Butler or one of your best players in Butler and go shorthanded. But they're just a weird group. I mean, look, they're still one of my favorite groups to watch because they are tough, and you know the way they play. I love Bam Adebayo, you know, for what he does on the defensive end. Spoelstra is a top 2, top 3 coach in the league. You know, it's just they're fun to watch. It's just this year, it just something was out this year for sure. What'd you see when you saw them both?
Exactly that. I just felt like they played better shorthanded. I think it was, you know, the pieces haven't fit well. I thought Wiggins and Adebayo would be good 1-2 punch at the defensive end, especially. It just hasn't fit well, and I don't know. It just that roster maybe it's time to move off some of those. Who do you move off? They were trying to move Hero for years, and now it's kind of like, oh, we're going to keep him now. It's just all over the place, and it's just not kind of the Miami Heat basketball we're used to seeing. So yeah, it'd be interesting. You know, look, you still kind of think going into we'll touch the play-ins later that, you know, can Miami sneak 2 play-in wins and somehow you still give them the credit for it because that's what they've just generally done in the past, right? But this roster, I don't know, it's just pretty clunky. So I think it's a good one. I think they definitely underachieved considering, you know, what they got back for Butler. They should have had a bit more of a kind of oomph after that trade, but they didn't. So that's definitely a good one, Pro. So last week we spoke about, you know, Memphis Grizzlies moving on their coach and how shocking that was. And about 6 hours later, after the podcast recorded, I think it was that day, you text me about it, Mike Malone getting fired, and I thought, like, this is definitely a pro. This is a NBA send tool or some shit that pro's seen again, or a Facebook post or something. But I was like, looked it up, and I'm like, you got to be shitting me. So that Mike Malone gets fired along with their GM Calvin Booth. Reports those two had a really bad relationship, didn't get along, didn't communicate well. It stemmed from the previous offseason where they lost KCP. Malone wanted him back at all costs. Malone wanted Brown traded as well. They didn't do that. Booth was telling, I think Najee was the guy that was the contentious point, and thought he could play some minutes next to Jokic at the 4 and some 5 minutes. Who's the other big Huff? Was it Huff? Is that the big other big white kid I read that they used to have?
They used to have him.
Yeah, so he's in Memphis now, right? So Booth was this always happens in the NBA. Booth was trying to tell Malone who to play. Malone's like, I won a championship, shut the fuck up, sit down, recruit me players, probably that kind of conversation. They said Booth was super hands-on and very, very kind of there every day, every minute, one of those kind of GMs, overbearing a little bit to an extent. These are the reports, this is not me saying it. There were reports Malone lost the locker room to an extent after, there's numerous press conferences about him. I don't know how to motivate these guys. We show them film, they probably don't watch it, and they say coach is tripping or something along those lines. I think this all stems from ownership, bro. I think it stems from ownership being cheaping out on not bringing back a championship roster. Now, look, you can somewhat say, look, we don't think that player's worth that. He's getting overpaid because he won a championship. But for a team like Denver that hasn't had a championship to that point, not a lot of success in Denver. They've had a couple of conference finals over the years, but not a lot of success as far as a genuine chance of winning a championship. They finally get it, and I just felt like they let it. I think KCP was the big one. You got to keep him. He was integral to their success. Played really well. Didn't need the ball. Hit big threes for him. Can guard, one of the best defenders, on-ball defenders in the league. Can really defend. And Malone has a right to be pissed, and then everything just kind of went downhill. But the fact that they moved both of them at once, because they're just like, you know what I'm going to do with it, that tells me that there was a huge divide, and they didn't want that infighting. But I think this stems from ownership, clearly. If they would have just went over that luxury tax a little bit, which historically this owner has never done or never wanted to do, they wouldn't be in this situation. They'd be probably top 3, top 4 team if they brought back that similar roster. But even, Jeff Green, someone like that, there's pieces that you could have brought back, and you feel like Malone's kind of snarkiness and being pissed off around it. I think he has a right to be. I've been around Mike Malone, fantastic coach, knows his shit, got some shit to him, but has a good balance. Like, I feel like behind the scenes, he's a pretty good communicator, but he can get fired up, and I like that balance. Not for everyone, but to move him on this close to the playoffs, it doesn't make sense to me. If you're going to audition, this didn't happen overnight. These reservations about Malone and Booth didn't just happen in April. This has probably been brewing for a while. So why not just do it in January? Give Adelman a genuine chance, who's now the head coach, right? A genuine chance to actually build some momentum going into the playoffs. I just think they're set up to fail going into their first round playoff bracket, pro.
Bogues, this is a very, very difficult situation for everybody, and everyone's got their fingerprints on it. I think that, look, the writing's on the wall, and it's been probably the worst kept secret in the NBA. Those two guys didn't get along. And look, I've been there on a low level, not getting along with a superior, and everybody knowing about it. And it just gets to be drama filled. Everyone sees it. It's just stupid. And look, in both sides, I could see it. One person thinks they're more important than the other. Mike Malone was the coach of the team. He took that team for 10 years through not so good times and took them to a championship. So he's probably has some entitlement as far as, look, I need to run this the way I need to run it. And then front office is like, look, we draft the team, we put the roster together, you play who we need you to play. It is a difficult balance. A lot of teams, there are teams that have it where it's just everybody's in lockstep. The GM, the coach, ownership, everybody's on the same page of what needs to be done. But this is both of their fault for not being able to get along and figure this thing out. It's not that difficult. Now, look, you could point to ownership, Bruce Brown not signing him after a championship, not signing Jeff Green. Then that roster wasn't. Look, Mike Malone did a hell of a job coaching that team to a championship. You've got Jokic, no doubt, but after that, you didn't have that other superstar with them. So he did a great job with them. They have some good players, don't no doubt about it. But he did a great job coaching that team. And then you did take away 2 pieces that were huge in the rotation that helped. And then you took a starter away from him the next season. So I could see the frustration there. But both those guys, they got to be adults about the situation. From what my people tell me that is in the know, ownership just said enough's enough. It's enough's enough with these two not getting along. It's been in the media. It's just me against him. And now it's just playing games with each other. like they're telling, front office is telling Malone who to play. Malone's playing, doing the George Costanza opposite of like whoever they want to play.
Yeah.
He doesn't play him. I've seen that happen front row and center when a coach didn't think they should sign a guy and they didn't play him out of spite.
Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah.
Larry David spite store, no doubt. Mike Malone opened up a spite store in downtown Denver and was like, fuck this. I get it. I totally understand the frustration. But those two guys are professionals. Mike Malone's been doing it a lot longer than Booth. They got to get on the same page. Ownership didn't do him any favors but it's in a different world with this second apron. Nobody wants to go into it. And I get it, but you got to understand too, you're a couple of steps away from being Memphis because no big time free agent wants to sign there for one reason or another. All right. So you have this team, you captured lightning in a bottle and won a championship. Right. And I get it. When you win a championship, it's just natural for the coach to think he's more important than the GM and the GM to think he's more important than the coach. Everybody's like patting themselves on the back like I did this. And for to a certain extent, they're both right. They both put that team in a position to be a championship team. But when it gets to be a soap opera and you guys can't get along, it's just too much, man. It's too much. To the point where the ownership just didn't say, I don't think one guy's worth more than the other. I'm letting them both go. Now, also, look, I'd never tell anybody how to run a team or how to coach a team. But Mike's got to understand, and Bogues, you got to deal with this when you become a coach too. Like, you have your values in which you think the game should be, like a pro should act, how they should prepare. And like Mike's one of those Carlisle guys, Spolster guys. He's 24/7 with it, and he prepares and he watches film after film after film after film, and he wants his guys to be tough. He wants his guys to be prepared. And if he feels as though those guys aren't doing it, like he said in those press conferences, and it's basically saying like fuck you to him, and he didn't want to hear that, and he lost it a little bit. But he's got to understand that the league's changing. These guys are more empowered, more entitled. And we can't coach them like we always used to, or we want to coach them all the time. And we got to be able to get through to them in different ways. And when you like back in the 90s and early 2000s, you can go through the media. The Phil Jacksons going through the media and crushing guys, and then they'll respond because they're like, oh, fuck, coach is pissed at me. They don't do that these days. And like they shut down on you. And when they shut down on you, ownership 99.9% of the time is going to side with the superstar or the players, and everybody moves on. And that's the problem. Like, no one's irreplaceable in this game. 99%
it's easier to move
of
one
people
coach than four players, right?
That's it. Yeah. So like Jokic, all right. Like they're pissed, that his GM or coach is done, but the next day he's like, all right, I got to move on. And that's
he's up for a contract extension too, right? In the next year. So yeah. That's the other interesting one.
Yeah, it's weird, man. It's a tough situation. It shouldn't have happened. Everybody has their DNA on this thing, from ownership to management to coaching staff. I agree with what should have been done. The firing should have been done, but they should have waited till after the year. From what reports have been said, they wanted to do it about a month or two ago. Then they went on like a 7 or 8 game win streak. Yeah. And then so they had to prolong it. Like, here's my thing, Bogues, right? To me, when you have it, all cylinders, you're going to fire a guy. A win streak doesn't matter. Because if you're going to fire the guy,
that just means they're really dictated to by media perception, right? If this is an issue where you have, it's that toxic between the GM and the coach, and it's guys can see it, and we are winning. It's a Band-Aid, right? We're putting a Band-Aid on a massive wound that's eventually going to gush out. You just got to say, we made the move because it was a toxic relationship. It's going to get leaked eventually, like it has. McMahon's got everything, and a few other guys have run deep dive articles on it. It just tells me the club's really cognizant on, shit, we're on a win streak, we can't do it now. Who gives a fuck? Just move on and just say, we're 1-5 straight, but there's huge issues in our locker room, and we think we got to do this now. Now it's horrible. Like, it's just all over the place. I just, and we'll touch on some stats with this in the stat segment around Malone, which is some interesting shit. But I just don't. I agree. And to note, Jokic had the clipboard in their last couple of games in the timeout. I found that very interesting, bro. So
the best.
Yeah, so he's on the board actually drawing plays and doing stuff. So look, one of the best basketball minds in not just the game today, but NBA history. But
yeah,
you know, that's interesting. I would have just done Jokic as player coach and just thrown it back to the 60s. You know, just
it would have been great.
Yeah,
it would have been great.
Really changed shit up. And Denver saved some money. So, you know, they love that.
Everybody, they would be riding into the game on horses.
Yeah,
it would be fucking great.
Just go play
Everybody's going to be eating those Fred Flintstone fucking Tyrannosaurus burgers.
Why not?
And that thing would have been awesome. Why not?
Just try it.
It's a circus anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a circus.
Make it
anyway.
a full-blown
Why not just add to it?
100%.
That's that. You know how the Chicago Bulls had that theme music coming out? Their theme music coming out should be dun 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 dun.
Can't be any worse.
Why not?
Can't be any worse.
No doubt.
Three quick ones for you. Embiid knee surgery. He'll be reevaluated in 6 weeks. Chauncey Billups, along with the GM Cronin, both get extensions with the Blazers. And Daryl Morey and Nurse are coming back next season as expected.
Yeah. I mean, real quick, Portland, I would have said that I would be against that if this is October about re-signing Chauncey. This year, he's done a really good job. Those guys play hard. They compete. They're not very good yet. They got some young players, but they stuck in there. I think both sides have done a good job. They got some good young assets. Give them some time. That's fine. The Daryl thing, look, the injuries that they've had. Now, you could say, well, you know, you brought in Paul George, and he's had a history, but I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. Look, they put talent around their guys. You know, they've had a good rookie in McCain that got hurt. So they got McClain that got hurt. They got got the injuries that happened. Maxey's was in and out. So, and I'll tell you what, they've had some good players emerge, and it's the only good thing about like that kid Kona. Is it Kona? Their center that's been starting for them.
The last 5 games,
yeah, he's played well. So they've had some guys that played
a good
well
pickup for him. He played really well for him. Small ball lineups.
Who's our boy? Who's our boy that we forgot in the trade?
Grimes.
Grimes.
Yeah. Quentin Grimes has been out. He's been like Bernard King all of a sudden. I mean, that fucking guy's been Hall of Fame. Another thing back to the Dallas deal. Nico just can't get a break, man.
Philly will be all right. Philly will be all right next season, but it's that Embiid knee and what they do there. But they've got some really good guards. They're gonna have a situation. Potentially have a situation where there's going to be some disgruntled guards on that team because they got a lot of talent at that guard spot. You got Maxey, you got McCain, you got Grimes and George. There's not enough. Is there enough basketball for a healthy Philly anyway?
No, but you could do Daryl Morey ball and start trading some of those guys for future first round picks.
Yeah, fair enough.
And you just fill it up. That's what I would do. Anything I can get, I would probably move on from George and get whatever I can get first round pick wise. You got Grimes on the cheap. Yeah, you just keep riding him. You got Maxey.
Oubre Jr. is there still too. Is he contracted? I think he is too, right?
Who's that, Oubre? Yeah, I think he's one of those like year-to-year deals.
Gotcha.
So like, if you can get some picks for George just because of the salary, save some money, go with Grimes. You still got Caleb Martin, I believe. Mm-hmm. So do they have Martin or they trade him to Dallas? I forgot if they still have Martin or not.
I'm pretty sure that he was in the deal
with Grimes.
With
right?
Grimes,
yeah.
He was with Grimes, yeah. So like, I just think that they have enough where they could move some, get some first round picks, get some capital, try to deal with this Embiid situation the best you can. You've got Maxey as your future star, so it'll be an interesting deal, just like anything else.
Yeah, it will be. We'll see how that goes. How's this? Willie Green is facing internal backlash over playing Alvarado over Dyson Daniels last season. Now, this is obviously just because Dyson Daniels has had a historical season at defensive end. He's going to win Defensive Player of the Year. His numbers are outstanding, and his offense was always raw, and it was always going to take time. He's a guy that you could see has the tools, and just going to take some time, especially the 3-point shot. But he's slowly starting to put it together. He's slowly had, like I've said numerous times, he's had 10 assist games, 15 assist games. He's had now he's starting to rebound more as a guard, along with those steals. And This was always going to happen, and I think that he was going to be better than he was. New Orleans was kind of a shit show when he was there. They were guard heavy. There wasn't really a role for Dyson in that squad. And then, yeah, I mean, you're playing Alvarado over him, who's a fantastic energy player, but Dyson's ceiling is 10 times higher than Alvarado's will ever be. It's going to be interesting when these kind of things leak. That tells me that Willie Green, that seat might be on warm at the moment, bro.
Everybody's seat's warm, man. But they, some heaters are just stronger than others, man.
And by the way,
you're gonna see.
I forgot to say that leaks definitely come from the GM.
Without question.
Traded him.
Without question.
It's his fault. I would have kept him if he played more. I traded him because I thought he wasn't any good.
Where was that leak? Where was that leak last year?
Yeah.
That's the thing. Be
Exactly.
transparent.
Yeah,
if you're gonna leak, really leak. That just goes to show you. It's every man for himself. Everybody's in for self. Just their self career motivated, man. Self perseverance. It's just crazy. But that's the way it goes. Look, rookies in this game, if you're not in development, you don't really understand it. You just and we're such in a world of like, if it's not done now, we get rid of them. It takes 18 months to develop an average NBA draft pick. It takes 2 training camps, 2 summer leagues, 2 off seasons. It takes 2 exhibition seasons and another half a year to have them truly figure it out. You're not going to be LeBron James. You're not going to be guys that just from day one, you're going to put up 19 and 9 and be a superstar. It takes time, especially with Dyson, like not being a shooter and offense really needed to work. It takes time. It takes reps in the gym. It takes minutes in the G League. It takes minutes in the NBA. It takes off seasons. It takes, it just takes training camp and going through the mistakes and getting your ass kicked and dusting yourself off and coming back the next day. It takes all of that. And, it just takes time. Now, in Willie Green's defense, 2 things, 1 for, 1 against. Alvarado did play well that season.
Mm-hmm.
Like he was a spark plug. He played hard. That he did play really well. And I think most NBA coaches are going to take guys that will put them in better positions to win now versus later. Now, that being said, Daniels was your draft pick, and if I'm going to go with anybody, I'm going to go with the guy that's going to be my starter probably in 2 years. I don't understand why you have a high first round draft pick that you just didn't use. So I don't understand that, but that's just, you got to be on the same page, man. You got to communicate. If the front office thought that they're going to die on that hill, like that's our guy, why are we playing Alvarado? I would have been like fucking the guy. I would have been like Billy Bean in fucking the Oakland A's with Moneyball. I would have traded him. If he's going to keep playing him, I won't have an argument. I'll just trade the guy.
Yeah.
And if he wants to play someone else, I'll trade him. And if the assistant coach wants to get into it, I'll fucking trade him. I'm trading everybody on the fucking roster. We're either going to play the nacho guy or we're going to play fucking Dyson Daniels. And just, that's it. But that just comes from communication and being on the same page. But yeah, I don't like that leak bullshit. I'm not a fan of it.
Yeah.
I'm not a fan of it.
A little bit of trouble there in New Orleans. Finally, just the last bit of news. The Mavs are losing millions this season. Figures having them losing a 9-figure valuation over the next 7 years from the Doncic trade. Merchandise down, attendance down, season ticket holders cancelling, and sponsors have jumped ship, bro. When's the last time you attended a Mavs game after the Luka trade, bro?
0.
So you're part of the problem. You're to blame for this decline in there.
Well, I haven't since I got shit canned. I haven't been to a Mavs game since. But it's funny. I had we had like a barbecue for our community around here. So I'm fucking, everybody knows I worked for the Mavs at one time. And like I got cornered. Like I had got like 3 or 4 people in the community that have Mavs season tickets. They were like, fuck the Mavs. This is bullshit. Nico, this. I'm not a big Fire Nico fan. Look, he made a trade. I'm not a fan of it. But like, the whole stuff that's happening, the circus that's happening around it where you need security and stuff, that should never happen. But I'll tell you what, I get some pissed off neighbors about the Dallas Mavericks, and they're all season ticket holders, and they all had premium seats, and they all canceled. There's a lady that was a season ticket holder. She had like blue hair. She's nuts, but she's all over social media. She's got money, and she's like, I mean, there's such a revolt that's going around the Dallas area. And I don't think that they took that in consideration with this trade. And I think that a couple of things. I think that, yeah, it's easily $100 million off because of the fact that that guy was worth that much. But I think they didn't take in account, forget about the trade itself. The trade was a bad trade. I get it, whatever. It is what it is. But they didn't take into account what this guy meant to the community of Dallas. And the second thing is, I said this before, the empathy that they lacked for the guy when they traded him, automatically leaking in the media, talking about his conditioning, talking about, like, they made him sound like he was fucking Belushi, a combination of Belushi from fucking Animal House and fucking Sean Penn's character, Spicoli from fucking Fast Times at Ridgemont High. They thought he was like a drug guy, ate his way out of the league. Like, and they put that all out there. And I don't understand. They have like a 3-minute film for him, the tribute video. You basically killed the guy for 3-4 weeks in the media about how bad of a guy he is. Now you want to say how great of a fucking guy he is.
The tribute video should have been, they should have doubled down and had him eating and drinking beer and stuff in the tribute video.
Why not?
Michael Finley taking the beer off him.
Oh, that was tough. My guy, Mike, that was tough.
Just double down on it. Fuck it. What could go?
Folks, like, you don't do that to a guy.
So
like
messed up.
A guy that meant that much, and then but that's the one thing they didn't understand, how much he meant to this community.
Small
of Dallas
market too,
and
small city. Like, finally got the piece after Dirk, and it's just
that wanted to stay. Wanted to stay.
Liked it there. Yeah, it was cool. Was cool about it. I saw Gilbert talking about this, Gilbert Arenas, and I agree with him. I don't think this is Nico. Nico's the fall guy. He's paid as the GM to be the fall guy. It wasn't his decision whatsoever. I think he was told, this is a mandate that you want to do. We want him out of here. And I think it was the ownership group that pushed it.
I think the ownership group, not knowing anything about basketball, when you're a billionaire, everybody answers to you. So whatever you think is going to happen, is going to happen. They don't really know how sports really works in today's market. I think today's day. I think 20, 30 years ago, you look at guys like Larry Bird who ran steps before games, guys that are, the Jordans of the world, the Kobes of the world, the Dirks of the world, guys who just worked hard all day, good shape, and they see him and they see sort of that's not what he was about. But that's just today's game. Look, it is what it is. Some guys are wired like that.
That's the thing. Like, he's a savant. Employ another 5 people to try to motivate him or help with his body if you have to. You've got a savant on your team. This isn't a guy that's like he's top 30. He's somewhere in there. This is, and then you're like, you know what? We could probably replace, like, he's 30th best star in the league. He's kind of second tier star. This isn't that guy. He's top 5 in the NBA. Like, worst case, put people around him, spend a little bit more. If that worries you, you got to try to make it work. Like, he's a savant. He's a guy that's, he's got that factor, right? Like, can change a game on its head.
You're worried about $350 million, and every contract in this league is tradable. And the value of his deal, you can get whatever you want. The biggest trough of picks and players that, I think he's the best player in the league. People will probably say I'm crazy for saying it. I've said that for a couple of years now. I think the guy's the best player in the league because of what he brings to the competitive nature, his skill set, and just he has the ball in his hands. I think he's great like that. He's definitely has his shortcomings, no doubt about it. But I think that they looked at this short-sighted. I think that they liked the attention they got for the finals last year. I think that they have a different idea what a superstar should look like. And I think they probably told Nico, look, make the deal, but we want a guy that's going to get us back to the finals. I don't care who it is. I don't care how old he is. Get a guy that's going to get us back to the finals, and we're going to pay that guy, or we're just going to go with that guy. We already have Kyrie, and make this deal happen. I think that that's what happened because it's too quick. no leakage involved at all. If he was smart, he would have leaked it, try to get value for him, try to get some momentum for this deal. I do agree with that. I do not agree that it's a conspiracy theory to get LA. People are just this ain't the assassination of JFK where everybody kept quiet about it. This is something that no one keeps quiet about. Everyone's gonna leak about it. That definitely, it's not that. The whole casino thing. Look, Texas ain't gonna vote in gambling for a long time, so it's not that. It's they just didn't have any experience in basketball. They just felt as though that somebody needed to respect the game more than he did, which was fucking preposterous. And they just made a deal that was very bad, not only for the team, the organization, but the community itself. And that's it. I do agree with you, and I agree with Gilbert on that for sure.
Yeah, I agree. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see if Dallas can get something back in the off season. They're gonna have to employ a whole new marketing division and probably 10x what they're 10x the people they got working on it now to try to get some tickets back. Playing previews, pro. Miami at Chicago. Who you got?
I guess Chicago.
You got Chicago. Yeah,
I guess Chicago.
Something tells me Miami, just Miami of the past, like I said, is gone. Historically, I would have picked them, but I'm going to go with Chicago. They're playing really good basketball at the moment. So we both have them through as the 9. Orlando at Atlanta. Oh, no, sorry. Atlanta at Orlando.
I go with Orlando.
I'm going to go with Atlanta. I'm going to give it a crack. I'm going to Snyder.
Dyson, huh?
One game. Quinn put it together. Mad scientist. I think he'll win that, and then we'll see what happens from there. That would then put Orlando versus Chicago for me. But I don't have Chicago getting through against Atlanta or Orlando. Do you?
No. Okay. That's a good question. I'm probably gonna. It's gonna be over before the next show, probably, right? So
yeah, it will be. I've got Orlando. I've got Orlando and Atlanta getting through, basically.
All right, I'm gonna go. So what? I had Chicago's already through for me, right? And then they're
the 9-10 Chicago, so they have to play a second game.
So Miami would have to play Orlando.
No, Miami's out.
I would go with Orlando.
Miami's out.
So I go
Orlando.
Yeah, so I go Chicago, Orlando.
Yeah, Chicago, Orlando. You've got Atlanta getting knocked out of the 8. Okay. Out west, you got Dallas at Sacramento. That's the 9-10 knockout.
Mm-hmm. I'm gonna go with Sacramento on this one.
I'm gonna go with Dallas just to be different. And Davis is healthy; he's gonna have a 40 ball. Golden State at Memphis. No, sorry, Memphis at Golden State.
I'm gonna go with Golden State.
It's a coin flip to me. I think it's gonna be a tight game.
Hey, so Ja has the grenade now.
Yeah.
Just to be safe, could he just be the fucking Wile E. Coyote and try to shoot an Acme rocket into the fucking stands instead of a fucking hand grenade?
It's a pretty funny celebration, though.
It is great. No, that's whoever told him about that. That was pretty good.
The league doesn't know. The league doesn't know what the hell to do neither because they've banned the gun gestures. But it's just
yeah, that's crazy. I'll go Golden State on that one. I think Memphis is too
in some trouble.
I think they're shot.
Same.
Yeah, I think they're
Golden
shot.
State, and then so that'll leave Memphis versus Dallas for me. Memphis versus Sac for you. You got Memphis getting through at the 8.
No.
Sac.
So
you got Sac beating them.
I got Sac beating Memphis. Okay. Yeah, so it'll be Sac. It'll be Sac and Golden State.
Yeah, I've got. I think Memphis and Golden State will both get through. I think the other two are pretty short-handed. Sac could get a little bit hot, but we'll see how it goes. All right, useful or useless. Mike Malone now holds the record as the head coach fired in season with the most games played at 79 till they were fired. And he's tied with Hubie Brown, actually, but they both hold the record now all time. The most games into a season fired. And the most wins in a regular season when fired, 47, which is tied with Larry Brown. So the Brown brothers both hold those records, but Malone's now tied with them. Useful or useless?
I'd say useless. Just the way he was fired, though, man. I don't know. Yeah.
I think it's useful.
I
think it's useful. That's telling us he's now tied as the coach fired the latest in a season, and he's also tied now as the most wins in a regular season when fired in season. So he's pretty crazy to.
Yeah. So
it goes to our point.
It
goes to our point of them doing it too late. That's what it goes to. Quite clear.
Yeah. Yeah. I can see that.
So I think it's useful there. Only teams since the pandemic that have not changed their head coach, Pro. Who is it? What teams you got?
The only team not to change their coach.
The only teams
Miami.
The only teams,
Miami.
The only teams that haven't changed their coach since the pandemic. How many do you think there are?
How many? Okay. Give me 2 seconds.
Miami's one.
Yeah, hold on. Let me just look at this. Okay. So Miami, Golden State, Golden State, Oklahoma City.
No, they changed.
Oh, they did. Okay.
Well, now that you're looking it up, the only other one is San Antonio.
I'm not looking it up.
San Antonio, but San Antonio get an asterisk because technically pops out. It's 3 teams that have not fired a coach since the pandemic, Pro, which is just absolutely fucking insane. It's 27 out of 30 teams have made a coaching change within the last 5 years.
Well, I did a study, Bogues, years ago, a few years back. I think I even said it on the show. I want to say that the 30 teams in the last 20 years, they averaged out to about 3.5 years to fire a guy on average per organization.
Yeah, and if you take away Pop and Spo out of those averages, go down to 1.5.
I mean, look at it like Sac, a million coaches, Phoenix, a million coaches. New Orleans
Lakers.
Been okay. Lakers have been through a million coaches. Houston has been through some coaches.
Washington.
Denver, no. Dallas.
Milwaukee.
Washington's been through some coaches. Milwaukee's been through some coaches.
Brooklyn,
Indiana, before Carlisle, I remember they fired two guys.
Crazy.
The Knicks have been through a bunch.
Cleveland as well.
Brooklyn, Cleveland.
It's just crazy how much turnover there is. There's just no patience anymore, and it's win now or else, or win now or be on your best behavior. So interesting one there. And last one for you, Pro. Which is the only number banned in the NBA?
67?
Close.
What is it?
69.
66? Oh, 69. Okay.
It really is banned.
Why is it banned?
Because of the sexual connotations.
It's a sexual content. Are you sure or are you just guessing?
Well, I know Dennis Rodman asked for it back in the day when he went to Dallas, I think it was, and they wouldn't give it to him. That's why he went with 67, didn't he? Or 60 something, or 68 or something like that. But I know it's the only number the NBA will not let you play under officially. So just a random trivia one for the kiddies out there. Pro, what do you got? Fact or fake news?
All right, Bogues, I got 2. The first one, Miles Bridges today checked in for a game for 6 seconds to keep, is it Miles Bridges or the other
Bridges?
Mikal Bridges, I apologize. Mikal Bridges checks in for 6 seconds to get his Iron Man streak and checks out. The NBA, I'm just asking your opinion, the NBA should mandate things like that to a minute minimum to keep your streak. Fact or fake news?
Fact. It's not good. Doesn't look good. Don't like it. Yeah. Don't like the fact that you.
No.
And if teams also did that for bonuses or whatever it is, I just think it's wrong. I think if you're going to play. I think Devin Booker played their last game. I think I might be wrong.
Yeah, he had comments after the game.
Yeah, and they're the comments I'm referring to. So Devin Booker came out and said, "Look, I'm coming out here to thank our fans for showing up after basically a shit show of a season. This could be the first game they're watching me play. It could be the last game they're watching me play. But I had a duty to come out and play tonight, and I respect that. I think that's the same as this. I mean, Bridges. I assume the conversation went, "We want to rest you tonight. Get you ready for the playoffs," and he's like, "I want my Iron Man streak. Let's just do it for 6 seconds." It's just shit. I don't like it. Not a fan of it at all. So yeah, I think it's you're right in what you're saying, Pro.
Fact or fake news? Yeah, I think so too, Bogues. It's a bad look.
The NBA should rescind
that,
it.
especially
the NBA should rescind it. They should be like, that game's not a game played.
Why not just play him a quarter? Like I was strange. It was strange today to watch Houston. Houston played all their players till third quarter, and in the fourth quarter they just emptied the bench and then played their bench guys. it was a weird deal, but like at least they played, which was weird too because for 2 games, like they've been cemented in that 2 spot for like 3 games now. So they played their bench for the last 2 games, and all of a sudden they play everybody. They play their regular guys, which the game meant nothing.
Yeah, because they probably
was weird.
That's where it's tricky. You still want to play, you keep that game shape and sharpness and preparation.
Yeah.
And they're not probably going to play for a week, I'd assume, with the planes now. The way the planes go, you don't turn around like you did back in the day as quickly. So some coaches are like, shit, we don't want 8 days between a game. Like we want to keep our rhythm. So there's a science. I don't think there's a right way or a wrong way, but there is a bit of a science to the way some coaches go about it. And we used to do a similar thing. Like we would, with Golden State, we'd be like, all right, guys, we're just going to play you guys in the first half and then play our bench or whatever it is. Because then you're factoring in shit. Does someone do an ankle in the fourth quarter if we play in regular minutes? So there's no right way or wrong way. You're gonna get hurt. You're gonna get killed either way if you make the wrong decision. But I just think as far as the Iron Man thing goes, I'm not a fan of it. I'm not a fan of the check in, check out ones. I think that sucks for the game. It sucks for the fans.
Yeah, it does for sure. Bogues, fact or fake news? There's been over 5 people that shot 100% from the free throw line for the year in the NBA.
Is there a min attempts we're going by, or can just 100%?
100%. Oh, I think there's a minimum of attempts, but they didn't say it here. But I assume that a guy fucking played for 1 game.
So fact, it's happened. You showed your hand. Fact.
No, fake news. It's only been 3.
Damn. The fire threw me off. Who is it?
Peyton Pritchard. Peyton Pritchard has done it.
He didn't miss a free throw the whole year?
Done it. What's up? Yeah.
Wow.
He's done it. Sam Hauser did it. And Tony Snell, 1920, has done it. I'm sorry. Minimum 1,000 minutes.
Okay, but yeah, like I think Snell shot like 5 free throws that year though, because that was that year where he was getting 0, 0, 0, and 0 a lot of games, wasn't it?
I don't know. Trent will have to look that one up. I'm not sure.
I think there was that one season where Snell was like, we used to laugh about it on the pod because he'd be like 19 minutes, 1 for 1 from 3, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0.
He's consistent, Bogues. He was consistent, but yeah. But that's pretty impressive. But
regardless, it's hard to do. Even if it's 10 for 10 for a season, and you're not getting volume free throws, you get 1 free throw every 10 games. It's hard to do. So that's impressive nonetheless.
No,
not missing a free throw.
No doubt.
So
no doubt.
I actually have a fact or fake news. Yeah. If it's welcome. Yeah. So this is for both Pro and Bogues. Coming into the season, a lot of rhetoric and talk around JJ Redick as a rookie head coach with no experience. In his first season, he secured the 3 seed in the West in a very tough Western Conference and is the first coach since Ty Lue to have 50 wins as a rookie coach. The next soonest after that was Steve Kerr. Is JJ Redick a legitimate top 5, top 10 coach in the NBA right now?
Ooh.
Fact. I would put him like lower. I'd put him like 8 to 10, but I would put him. I think he's done a great job. And look, I think you have to surrender to what your roster is. And look, they weren't great. They weren't great before the trade, and obviously they got the trade. And I saw a stat today that they since the trade, they're first in 8 statistical categories since the trade, and including offense, 3-pointers made, all that. But I think he's done a great job. I didn't expect much for the Lakers, but it didn't really have a lot to do with him. I just think it was their roster coming in, and I think the Dorian Finney-Smith trade and then the trade to get Luka was outstanding for them. But I think he's done a great job. His ATO package, he hasn't lost it on the sidelines. I think he's got those guys going, and it's hard too because he's got LeBron there, so it's not like you could control LeBron like you could most other players that you coach. So I think he's done a great job. Bogues, what do you think?
Yeah, in fact, I think they've overachieved for sure. I know the Luka trade's really given them a nice push, but their roster's pretty bare, especially their bench. They just don't have a deep bench. But the fact that he's gone to some funky rotations at times and changed things up when he needed to. Consistency was still a bit of an issue at times for him, but to get 50 wins as a rookie head coach with a roster where basically your first star for a lot of the season was injured, your other star's 40, and then you got your other star who's wasn't playing a lot and out of shape. I think they've done a pretty good job to get 50 wins out of that. So,
Trent, what do you think?
I tend to agree. I just thought it was funny coming into year, like a lot of jokes about how he's coming off being a professional podcaster to now running, and his only experience was like third grade, schoolboys coaching previously. So to see him come in, get over 50 wins, lock in a 3 seed with the Lakers team, I think everyone had in the play-in. Obviously, granted, Luka came along, but even despite that, they were a 6 seed prior to Luka coming in. So I just wanted to see what you guys thought around what he was able to do with this team.
I think, I think that people had a hard time about how he got the job, because obviously that podcast got a lot of politicking for him to get the job, for the Lakers and I don't care what anyone tells me. I think that was a big part of it. I think being in the media, for a year or two, before this, with not only the podcast, but ESPN, covering games, being around, getting a chance to spend time with coaches. He's got a great basketball mind as it is. He's a prick, no doubt about it. Like, he is a prick. He's tough, especially when he, on those shows where he got off on guys and stuff like that. But he's got a lot of Carlisle in him, in the sense that I think his ATO package, I think his offensive mind is off the charts. I think he might be a little bit more polished, than Carlisle with some of the social situation stuff. But I think that I think I could see a definite similarity between him and Rick early in their career, being really good at, being a high level offensive mind. When Rick was the offensive coordinator for Larry Bird in Indiana, he ran basically their whole offensive package. So, I could see a lot in, in JJ, I could see a lot of Rick in him, and I think he's going to be really good. And his roster's locked in pretty good. As long as they don't have anything catastrophic happen to them, I think he'll be around for a long time.
We'll see. We'll do our previews next week once we know the plans, but they will be obviously facing Minnesota, so a pretty interesting first round. Luka does generally pretty well against Gobert-led teams, so otherwise it'll be a pretty even series, but we'll touch on that next week, Pro. So we'll watch these playing games, do our previews, and see you Monday a week. Do 3 in a row, baby. 3-peat.
Hey, hopefully, fingers crossed. Hopefully, there's no more vacations for you in tropical islands.
Working.
We'll see that.
No, that wasn't a vacation.
Sure.
It was a job, man.
The only thing that's working for you is that fucking interest rate of your money. Oh, those 9 fucking digits you got in the bank. So we'll figure it out.
All right, bro. See ya.
Wait it, fellas.
All right, just finishing on some NBL. Not a whole lot of news besides free agency trend, unless you want to throw something else in. But Bannon to Tasmania, I think that's a huge pickup for Tasmania. I really like it. They also got Nick Marshall too, who was actually playing really well not really well, but playing decent for Adelaide, and completely fell out of the rotation. They got 2 young guys there that I think are really, really decent pieces. So good on Tassie, and they're going to fit perfectly in there. Liafa and Tarangi to New Zealand, so they're going all New Zealand lineup by the looks of things. Krislovic went to United. Froling signs for 3 years in Illawarra, so the first year is going to be a write-off for the most part. He'll be out for most of that year. If he comes back, I'd be very surprised, but basically a 2-year deal beyond that. Blanchfield re-ups for 2 years and stays in town with the NBL 1 program there. Flynn Cameron, big signing for Adelaide. We were, one of the teams that he was talking to, but ended up going to Adelaide for a stack of cash, rumored to be. So they've gone big, and I think he's a pretty decent piece that was looked at by a bunch of teams. Harris goes from Perth back to Adelaide, and Shea Lee re-ups with United. So that was an interesting one as well, because I thought that he'd be close to retirement, the concussion thing. So he's an integral part. I think once Delhi left, I think they had a bit of an issue there with just too many ball handlers. I think Ely, Delhi, CG, Clark. You got 4 guards,
and then you look at their bench, Cameron, so forth. It just
didn't fit.
And then you're going to bring in Dash.
Yeah, just super overloaded. So they had to make some moves, and I think they thought they'll let Delhi gum to us, obviously, and then Cameron's gone elsewhere, and they'll rebuild probably. I'd assume now they'll probably go with United. Will probably go with some sort of import scoring guard, probably a 2. What do they do though? Because they want Ely at the 1 and CG at the 2 starting likely. So they'll probably go a wing, but they'll need some sort of import scoring guard too. So that's where it's going to get interesting. Do they bring Clark back as that bench role because he's happy to come off the bench?
Yeah, that was the name I was thinking of. And then, but then how do you replace Whitey Whitey now going overseas, like I think it's a.
Is he completely out though, or is it just the Euro, just the off season out?
Oh, he did his big message on his Instagrams just thanking United fans. So
maybe
that in itself, I thought, man, like he's not going to be coming
still
back.
Signed because he can't play. He's not playing EuroLeague. He's signed too late. So I read that he can only play in the German league at the moment. He's not. He can't play in any of the EuroLeague games. So yeah, it makes things interesting to see. Maybe he's just trying to leverage that into another job somewhere else, or there's an agreement there to keep him for the next season. So,
but that makes things hard for them, right? Because then they're kind of in limbo with what they can do.
It's as being an NBL free agent. We speak to free agents all the time. There's guys that want Euro outs to a certain date, so they might, or we'll sign with you in Sydney, but our client, if he gets a good Euro deal by August, we want to out. Same with the NBA contracts. For guarantees, you take probably that risk, but there's guys that say, okay, we want an out. If there is a minimum of a 2-way, we want an out by August, and we're like, we can't wait till, like, if you leave us July 30th, we're fucked, like, because we're building our roster around that piece, right? So that's where it gets a bit tricky for the NBL, and those outs are a tough one. And Koppinen is back to New Zealand officially to coach. That's really it, NBL news-wise, Trent, unless you have something different. There's not a whole lot going on.
Just rumor mill stuff, guys linked with certain teams, but that stuff really rarely means anything.
Yeah. It's hard with the rumor mill stuff. Sometimes it's agent-based, trying to get leverage and price of player up.
Yeah.
If you're talking of Team X, you're talking to Sydney, and then the agent might leak to a media source saying, Perth's about to offer that client, that player a big deal, and then it tries to corner us into paying more. So there's a lot of innuendo out there for the fans. So don't always believe everything that's in the media. Sometimes stuff is planted by agents. Sometimes stuff is planted by clubs to create leverage, or to drop value. So there's all those shenanigans that go on, and the media is a useful tool sometimes. Unfortunately, there are some good journalists out there, and there are some bad ones as well that take everything for face value and don't realize they're being played by agents and teams. And we see it all the time, and we just can't stop and laugh sometimes, because you're just like, it's just crazy, especially when sometimes teams will journalists will reach out to us saying, where do you see this player valued, even though we're not interested? And we can be like, oh, we're seeing valued at a super high number. So then it puts pressure on that same club to have to pay that number, So there's games with the salary cap as well, and that's just the way it goes. But yeah, NBL's pretty bare bones right now. I wish they'd bring back trades, because this would be a perfect time to have some added discussion in a dead period for the NBL. But it'll be interesting to see how free agency finishes up.
Yeah, it's the thing I love about it, especially this year, is and you look at the last few years, the retention and returning of Australian talent, and whether or not that trend continues moving forward. I think there's a lot of big names kind of still floating about in terms of Aussies that will be available. So I think that's the biggest place to look this off season, where traditionally it's always been the import space and what imports teams can bring in. So I'll be interested to see kind of what Aussies decide to come back and play.
Yeah, and what else will be interesting, if there is another franchise or two that does pop up in the next 5 years, is that dilutes that talent further. You got to be really careful. You want more teams, you want the league to expand, but with that, you got the Australian talent's the problem, right? Just having a whole nother 2 teams with 8 or 9 Aussies, where do you get those from? Then it's depleting teams that are in the league already, are losing their guys, and you're like, oh shit. Then it does help fringe NBL guys that are NBL 1 get roster spots, but then does that dilute the product? That's what you got to be really careful of. Australia is a small country in the relative terms of the world of basketball. That's the only thing I stress about, is if you've got 1 or 2 more teams popping up in the next 5 years, where does that all go? Then you got to really rely on your imports, because the development stuff won't be as great. So that's where it does get a little bit murky, but it's a good thing to expand, but there's also downsides of it. So people need to be aware of that. See you all next week. Big week in the NBA playing. Looking forward to those. And then hopefully have some more news in the NBL.